All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here on time. We are at time, so let's go ahead and get us started. Let me just start off by saying that I am going to record this class, and I will post the video through Blackboard. I'll give you details about that later on, but I just wanted you to make sure, I wanted you to know that it will be recorded. Also, as far as online classes go, first of all, thanks for bearing with us the first week online. It sucks. Sucks for me, sucks for you, especially in a hands-on class like herpetology, but we're going to do our best to make it work. Let me just say right now that class is normally scheduled from 2:10 to 4 o'clock, but there's no way that we're going to spend an hour and 50 minutes sitting in front of our computers. So class today will be short. I didn't think anybody would be disappointed by that. I am super excited to teach this class and have all of you on board. And we're going to get going with a bit of content to start us off today, as well as some introductions of myself and other instructors and leaders in the class. And let me just see here, making sure I've got people all logged in. One quick note, if you are comfortable and would like to keep your screen on or your camera on during the lecture, that's great. It helps me kind of get some visual feedback. However, if you don't feel comfortable doing so, I'd prefer not to, that's fine too. I'm not going to ask you about it. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me just get my screen organized here. And I'm going to start off this class with kind of an unusual lecture. And that lecture, or actually here's today's agenda. Let me walk you through what we're going to do today, and then I'll jump in and get us started. Got a lecture titled Why Herpetology Should Not Exist. Then you'll do an activity. We'll be talking to each other on why herpetology should exist. We'll do an overview of your instructors, and you'll get a chance to meet us. Just take a few minutes there. And then we've got an activity planned about your favorite herp. Then I'll take a little bit of time to walk through the course structure of what to expect, where to find assignments, and that kind of thing. And then finally, we will wrap things up with some reminders at the end. So that's the structure for today. Let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So this is lecture number 1. There is some content here. You may want to, actually, I recommend taking notes on what I'll talk about now. The title of this lecture is Why Herpetology Should Not Exist. Strange way to start a class titled Herpetology. And there's 2 primary reasons why I think herpetology should not exist. And I'm going to use this time to try to convince you of exactly that. I'm not trying to convince you to drop the course. You should stay in the course. Just stay, bear with me that the herpetology as a field should not exist. The first reason is that herpetology is defined as the study of reptiles and amphibians, but lumping these 2 taxa together from an evolutionary perspective makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And let me explain why I mean by that. So here you see a simplified phylogeny of vertebrates here, very simplified phylogeny here. Just to orient you, the phylogeny describes a hypothesis of the evolutionary relatedness amongst different groups. And we'll talk about this in more detail later in the course, but it basically is kind of like a family tree for species. It describes who's most closely related to who. And if we look on this very simplified phylogeny, we see that amphibians are up here, and we see that lizards and snakes, for example, are here, and crocodiles are here. So these are different groups that are all lumped into the study of herpetology. And you can see here that they are not very closely related to each other, and they're not each other's most closely related relatives. So, for example, crocodiles and turtles, for that matter, are more closely related to birds than either group is to snakes and lizards. So let that sink in for a quick second. So if you see, picture in your mind an alligator, picture in your mind a beautiful Galapagos tortoise, now picture in your mind a sparrow fluttering around your window. Those groups are more closely related, or the crocodiles and turtles are more closely related to those birds than either of those are to snakes and lizards. To continue to blow your mind that we, meaning us humans, are more closely related to snakes than snakes are to frogs. And so if we really wanted to lump groups together, it would look much different than arbitrarily lumping amphibians and so-called reptiles together. So if we go back to our family tree, our vertebrate phylogeny here, I'm going to add a few groups that aren't on here. I'm going to add turtles. Notice I just made it pop up there. That is the turtles are the sister group to crocodiles and birds. I'm going to add the tuatara here, which is, of course, an important Another group of reptiles most closely related to the squamates, which includes your lizards and your snakes here. And if we look at this again, if we look at this in its totality, it really makes no sense to lump those amphibians with the rest of these reptiles, because we've got mammals in between here, we've got birds over here. And so really, I mean, if we're going to do that, if we're going to create a field called herpetology, we might as well just have a study that's called mammictheology and just lump mammals and fish together and be like, oh, you guys have scales or fur and you produce milk or not, so we're going to study you together. That wouldn't really make any sense, but it doesn't really make any sense to lump reptiles and amphibians together. And so to introduce some vocabulary for how to describe these relationships, I want to introduce the term monophyletic. And the term, the term, I guess there's not really a term for it, but the organisms studied under the field of herpetology, often called so-called herptiles, are not monophyletic, meaning it doesn't include all of the groups that share a most recent common ancestor and all of that ancestor's descendants. And so what we can say instead, they're not monophyletic, they are instead paraphyletic. So in this case, herps, meaning reptiles and amphibians, are paraphyletic with respect to mammals. So if you look on the family tree here, you see the most common ancestor of amphibians, mammals, reptiles, and birds all right here. And so if we talk about this group, we're excluding this group of mammals for no real evolutionary reason. We're just choosing not to include these guys in the study of herpetology. So we can say that herps are paraphyletic with respect to mammals. Also, if we look to reptiles, specifically, they're paraphyletic with respect to birds. So if we look at all the common ancestors, or the most recent common ancestor of all reptiles, we'd look right here. And if we included all of its descendants, we'd include birds. And in fact, as I said, birds are more closely related to turtles and crocodiles than turtles and crocodiles are to lizards and snakes or to Atara. We're going to talk about these terms in a little more detail in class. You've probably already encountered them in your evolutionary course or other courses, but be sure that you understand the terms monophyletic and that the group herps is not monophyletic, and make sure you understand paraphyletic and know that herps are paraphyletic, for example, with respect to mammals, reptiles paraphyletic with respect to birds. So that's my first reason why herpetology should not exist. Okay, I got a message here. I can't. Okay, so I apologize. I thought that when I was moving, you could see my cursor. Can you see my cursor now? Go ahead and actually write in the chat for me if you can see. When I move it over here, can you see it? Yeah, okay, cool, great, thank you. Sorry, I was just getting used to the way the screens are set up. Okay, so let me pause here, especially given that you couldn't see my cursor. Let me see what questions you have about this first reason why herps should not exist. Okay, let's move to reason number 2. The name sucks. So the origin of the term herpetology is from the Greek word herpeton, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means to creep, and ology, which means the study of something. So it's the study of things that creep. So really, if you were telling, somebody asked you like, oh, what are you studying this semester? And you were like, I'm studying things that creep. No one's going to be terribly excited about that. And if they are excited about that, you want to be friends with that person. Also, it is, aside from being unappealing, it's completely inaccurate. Reptiles and amphibians exhibit a great diversity of modes of locomotion. They can swim gracefully, such as sea snakes or sea turtles, or many species of lizard even. They can hop long distances in very controlled manners. They can even do crazy stuff like run across the water on their hind legs, like this lizard. And believe it or not, they can even fly, or glide more technically. So here you see a gliding snake, and they actually can control the way that they move in the air and the way that they land very precisely. There's species of frogs and lizards that can do something similar. So the name to say that reptiles and amphibians creep is just simply biologically inaccurate. We can see where this comes from. So Carolus Linnaeus, who's considered the father of modern taxonomy, also a terrible racist, he described reptiles by saying this. These foul and loathsome animals are abhorrent because of their cold body, pale color, cartilaginous skeleton, filthy skin, fierce aspect, calculating eye, offensive smell, harsh voice, squalid habitation, and terrible venom. And so their creator has not exerted his powers to make more of them. Well, he was super wrong, because there's more than 10,000 species of reptile and amphibian. And in fact, the vast majority of them don't possess the traits that he describes here, some of which are completely untrue. They don't have cartilaginous skeletons, for example, and some of which are just kind of weird, like describing a reptile or an amphibian as having a calculating eye. So even the person who gave us our modern system of binomial nomenclature for organisms had obviously very strong and negative opinions of these creatures. So there we go. Finally, a last reason why, last piece of evidence under reason number 2 is this. How many times do you have to explain to someone that herpetology is not the study of herpes, nor is a herpetologist someone who has herpes? I don't know how many times this has come up in my career, and I'm tired of it. And just by the fact that it sounds like herpes, we need to get rid of this field. And that is the conclusion of my second reason. I hope I have, thank you for attending my TED Talk. I hope I've convinced you that the field of herpetology should not exist. Boom, done. Now it's your job to convince us that it should exist. So what I'm going to do is break you into small breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people. I'm going to ask you then to use your knowledge or maybe some quick research to prepare an argument about why, in fact, you think herpetology should exist, why it's important, and why it should exist. Now, if you're taking this class, you probably are interested in the topic, especially given how challenging it can be to get into this class sometime. So you probably have some reasons in your back pocket already. You're going to have 10 minutes to discuss this and kind of prepare this argument with your group. And I'm going to ask you to take notes carefully. We're going to return to this on Monday in class when we're in class in person. I want to just set us up with a discussion about this now, and then Monday in class we'll return to this. So make sure you designate someone in your group as a note taker so that you can refer and refresh your memory on Monday. And this will be worth 2 points for participation. I realize right now you have no idea what the points are, how they count. We'll get into the syllabus in just a little bit. Just know that by doing this, you're earning points, and that is useful for your grade. So let me go ahead and split you up into breakout rooms. This will take just 1 second. You'll have 10 minutes in those rooms. Before I do, what questions do you have for me? All right, let's do this. Okay, here I said I wanted 3 to 4 per room. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And you'll have 10 minutes to discuss with your new friends where you will go. And Dr. Mason in Princeton, I will pull you out and I'll chat with you guys in just a second here. All right. All right. Andrew, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Cool, cool. Okay. How's everything going?
Not bad. Did you happen to see the email I sent you just before class?
I don't think so.
So
it sounds like I would know if I saw it.
Probably, yeah. My wife is very, very sick with the flu, and so I was a little concerned. Am a little concerned. I don't, we'll see.
Yeah, I hope she's okay. And you know, it's the flu and not the COVID.
I'm fairly confident because I had the exact same thing Monday nights, but she seems to be having much more severe symptoms than me.
Yeesh.
Yeah, so I'm here, but I have my phone in front of me in case I need to leave sort of unexpectedly.
Yeah, definitely don't, no worries at all. And if for whatever reason you missed the introduction section, we can just get you on board on Monday with that.
No, I've been here the whole time. I just wanted to give you the heads up that I am sort of fielding a unexpected.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for engaging in that discussion. Rather than share out here in the online format, we're just going to revisit this on Monday. So we'll spend some time Monday in class just rejoining with your groups and then kind of sharing out your reasons why herpetology should exist. It's just a better activity to do in person, so we're going to save it. I also want to acknowledge, one of you asked if I how I'll be sharing the lectures. I'll talk about this later, but I just want to clarify that I am recording the lecture and I will post it to I'll post it to YouTube and get the link on Blackboard for you. And I'll do that with all of our lectures in class. And I want to acknowledge that I can lecture pretty quickly sometimes. I just get really excited about things and move through it. And I especially am prone to do this when we're online because I have no like feedback from people on how fast I'm going and how much you're still writing and that kind of thing. So I do apologize for that. I know I went through the beginning there a little quickly. If I'm ever doing that, you can feel free to put a message in the chat, slow down, dude, and I will. But everything will be available as recording as well, just to make sure that you're getting the information you need. So with that in mind, let me tell you a little more about myself. So our class actually has 3 instructors, and I'm going to go back and share my screen here. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Actually, before I do though, let me just take a quick pause and see what questions you have for me before we move on. Okay, well, now is a chance for all the instructors to introduce themselves. I'm going to go first here. Let me just go back here. Okay, so here I am in 1990, 90, 91, something like that, based on the style of shorts you see there. I've got 2 water snakes wrapped around my neck. I have no idea why I was doing that. I probably wouldn't do that now, but there I am. And I grew up running around outside and I loved animals, and I especially had an affinity for snakes. For 6 years in my 20s, I taught high school in Denver, Colorado. And during this time, I actually conducted field work with some snake populations in these urban parks right in Denver with students. And it really piqued my interest doing some work there. I did some work with box turtles at the same time. And I decided to go back to school. So when I was in my late 30s, I went back to a community college and took Bio 101, the class you've all already taken. I didn't take until I was in my late 20s at a community college, and some other classes while I was teaching, and ended up moving to Iowa, where I earned my PhD at Iowa State University. You can see me doing some work for my PhD there. My PhD work focused on populations of garter snakes actually in the mountains of California, and how aspects of their physiology and behavior allowed them to adapt to these very different kinds of environments where they lived. It was very cool stuff. I enjoyed it very much. And after that, I was fortunate enough to receive a fellowship where I had the opportunity to live and work in France for 2 years, where I studied a species of lizard in the Pyrenees Mountains in the south of France. We conducted a lot of experiments at a research station at the top of a mountain, and you can see me and one of my research teams here at the top of that station. You can see the Pyrenees Mountains off in the background. It was really quite a fantastic experience, both to live and to work there. I then came to OWU in 2019. So this is my 3rd year here at OWU. My work here has focused on salamanders. So here's some excellent researchers, some of whom you may know, or one of whom you may know in this class, probably both of them you know. And we have an array of cover boards, so standardized boards set up at the Krause Preserve, which is an OWU nature preserve just south of town. We also work with collaborators at Ohio State on their site there. And we're performing what's called a mark recapture study, where we catch animals, we collect data on them, so their body size, if they're reproducing, this kind of thing. And we mark them individually, and then we release them. And then we go back and we can catch them again, and we can see how they've moved around, how they've grown, if they've survived, and answer a lot of cool questions about organisms that way through marker capture. We're also doing something really similar here at the Delaware Run, the little creek that runs through campus. There's 2 snake species that live in that run. And later in this spring, we'll be doing some marker capture work with those guys during class time. So you get some hands-on experience with that. I also focus on urban lizards. So the same species of lizard I studied in France, very fortunately happens to be established. Well, it's an invasive species, so maybe not fortunately/unfortunately, is established here in Ohio, specifically in Cincinnati. And with an awesome research team, you see us here with downtown Cincinnati here in the background. We've been conducting work for 2 years into this system of lizards, trying to understand basically what allows them to be so successful in these highly urbanized environments. And if you're interested in this research, I'll be talking a lot more about the stuff that I do later this semester. But if you're interested now, you can check out the amazing lab website that students in the lab built last year. It is GLARE, so it's the Gangloff Lab of Amphibian and Reptile Ecophysiology. So it's glare-owu.wixsite.com. Check it out or let me know. I'm happy to talk about any of this stuff in more detail. I will say that I absolutely love teaching this class. It is my, I live for this class. So I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to spending this semester with everyone. Now, I mentioned I'm the lead instructor for the course, the instructor of record, but we also have 2 great researchers that will be helping us this semester as well. The first is, actually, who's first? The first is Princeton Vaughn, who many of you probably know. He's a senior here at Ohio Wesleyan. He took this course 2 years ago, and he has been working, he and I have been collaborating for the past 2 years very closely on studies of lizards. And I'll let him talk about that in more detail. And then after Princeton, we have Dr. Andrew Mason, who's a postdoc at Ohio State University. And just to clarify, I mentioned I had a postdoc in France. Dr. Mason is a postdoc at Ohio State. Postdoc is kind of the position you get when you have your PhD, but you're not yet a professor if you're on that career track. And it's kind of this weird in-between thing where you've earned your PhD, but you don't have like a permanent job yet. And I'll let him talk about that. But he's going to be co-teaching some really cool stuff on snake venom and venom evolution later this semester. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Princeton Vaughn, and he can introduce himself. Princeton, let me make sure I get your screen highlighted here for everyone. I'm going to put you in the spotlight.
Ooh,
is Princeton's face spotlighted for everybody? Yes. All right, good. All right, Princeton, here you go.
All right, cool. So like Dr. Gangloff said, my name is Princeton Vaughn, and I'm a senior here at OU. And I actually got my start in biology by watching lots and lots of Animal Planet as a kid. And so Animal Planet had this show called The Most Extreme. And if you don't know about it, you should go look it up on YouTube because it is an incredible experience. It's so good. But anyway, I just like religiously watched that show as a kid. And I really, really fell in love with it. And I guess that started like me sort of down a rabbit hole into learning about different animal adaptations and how animals adapt to different environments. And that's why I work on these lizards adapting to this highly urbanized environment. So next thing. All right, so like I said before, or I guess I didn't say this, but I am a zoology major, and I have 2 minors, one in environmental science and one in music composition. Next. And in the music scene, I guess, here at OU, I am pretty active. I'm a member of the choir. I also, as I said, study music composition, and I'm also a member of the all-male a cappella group on campus, the Jaywalkers. Next. So I also study functional morphology in urban lizards with Dr. Gangloff. And if you don't know what functional morphology is, trust me, by the end of this class, you will know what it is because I will talk your ear off about it. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world to talk about. So just be prepared. So basically, we study different aspects of how these lizards move in different environments. So you can see here me chasing a lizard with a paintbrush sort of horizontally on a sprint racetrack and looking at how they run fast. We also do clinging and climbing performance. And so you can see me chasing a lizard with the paintbrush sort of vertically, and then also pulling the lizard back as demonstrated ever so gracefully by our little lizard friend here at the bottom. So yeah, that's basically a overview of what I do. I guess now we'll hand it over to Dr. Mason.
Great, thanks, Princeton. And just to be clear, Princeton's role, Princeton is the undergraduate TA in the course. So he's going to be helping us with a whole bunch of things in the class this semester. And let me spotlight Dr. Mason here. There we go. All right, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Eric, or Dr. Gangloff. So I guess you're going to notice a common thread here through your instructors. So when I was younger, I also really loved animals, and I also had a very strong affinity for snakes. Not quite sure why, but I definitely recall that even from when I was a child, I was always reading books about snakes. And although I did watch a ton of the most extreme, I really grew up watching these two guys that you can see on the slide, Steve Irwin and Jeff Corwin. If you don't know them, they were these two guys, and they would go out into these different environments and find a bunch of animals, and especially snakes and crocodiles and lizards, and tell the audience about them. And I used to watch these shows as a kid and think like, man, I really want to do that. Like, I want to go and be these guys and go run around in the jungle and catch stuff when I grow up. So from there, when I was in college, to sort of kind of pursue this avenue, I started to work at a zoo, actually. There was a zoo where I came from on the east side of Pennsylvania, and it was a small zoo, and they let college students work as interns and even part-time as a zookeeper. And so I really liked working at the zoo. If anyone has ever had an interest in working with the zoo, I would be happy to tell you about my experience. But one of the things that I found after a couple of years was that although I had a lot of great time, that I had a lot of questions that were really kind of bothering me, or not bothering me, but just kind of like there was this itch that wasn't being scratched as I was working at the zoo and around all these animals, but there were a lot of things I wasn't learning that I wanted to know about. And so a few years later, once I graduated, I did a master's degree in South Texas, and then I started my PhD. And ultimately, I got my PhD from Clemson University, but I actually started it at the University of Central Florida. And one thing about when you go for a PhD is what's really important is what lab you pick. It's not so much important about what school you go to as the lab and what they do. And the lab that I worked in almost completely studied venomous snakes, specifically vipers. And this was great because it fit right in with everything I'd wanted to do. I was getting to answer interesting questions. I had hoped that I would get to go catch some snakes in the jungle, just like those guys I idolized as a kid. And sure enough, that's more or less what I got to do for my PhD. So I specifically focused on understanding the evolution of venom as an adaptive trait in this really interesting group of venomous snakes called palm pit vipers. So I got a couple of pictures of them here. On the top right, you can see one of my favorite species. Its scientific name is Bothrechus thalassinis. I think it's called the Merendon palm pit viper, but these guys are these really neat arboreal vipers. So they're almost sort of a stereotype. Most vipers, in fact, do not live in trees, and they're not green. These guys are both of those things, but they have all kinds of colors. You can see the pretty blue in that particular animal. And as part of my PhD, I had to go collect all these animals. And so I spent a lot of time doing work in Costa Rica, Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico, which are the only countries these animals are found. So I got a decent amount of experience in the field, and then did a lot of work in the lab, and especially learning a lot of evolutionary analyses, which is what I am now, is basically an evolutionary biologist. And so once I graduated, I started my postdoc, which is where I am currently, and I am working at Ohio State. I am working with a professor at Ohio State named Dr. Lyle Gibbs, and we started collaborating when I was in my PhD. And while I really enjoyed working on the palm pit vipers, the fact that they don't reside in the US makes them pretty hard to work on. So for my PhD, I'm working on a few species that do live in the US that have really interesting differences in their venom. One of them lives in Ohio. So there are only a handful of venomous snakes that live in Ohio, but the Massasauga is one you may have heard of because it is a threatened species. So it's one of special concern. And that's one of 3 species that during my postdoc, I'm looking at understanding the genomics of how their venom evolves and changes across recent speciation. And specifically why I'm here is that I've been working with Dr. Gangloff, Dr. Gibbs and I have, because we're really interested in this idea of studying the Podarcis lizards that are invasive to Cincinnati, to understand the genomics of what makes them very effective invasive species, and how some of the important not life history, but historical effects of changing population size have really changed their genetics. And so throughout the semester, I'll be popping in and out to add a little bit where I can, where I'm most useful. I'm especially excited to tell you guys a little bit about snake venoms, because I have spent a ton of time studying it, and I just think they are the coolest traits among vertebrates. I think that pretty much covers it for me.
Excellent. Thanks, Dr. Mason. Let's see here. I'm going to put myself back here. Before we move on to our next activity, got a chance to hear a little bit about us. We're going to learn about you in a minute here as well. Or actually not in a minute, but well, you'll see with a survey over the weekend. What questions do you have? Anything before we move on?
Dr. Gangloff, I have a question that I should answer preemptively, if I could. Because every time I've ever introduced myself and given that same spiel I give you, there's always one question that everyone wants to ask. And so I'm just going to answer it. And the question is, have you ever been bitten by a venomous snake?
I knew that was going to be the question.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's always asked. I'm sure that some of you were thinking it. If you didn't type it and you were just going to ask it later, that's okay. But I'm always asked that. I have not. I sure hope not to. If I ever do, I'll be pretty embarrassed because I go through a lot of effort not to. So just wanted to get that one out of the way early.
Excellent. Bitten by wall lizards, on the other hand, that's a different story, as Princeton can attest to that. All right, now with that in mind, you learned a little bit about us. I want to try something a little bit different here, and I want to learn a little bit about you, and more specifically, what kind of herps you're interested in. So go ahead, grab your phone, scan that QR code, and just go ahead and enter the name of your favorite herp. And then we're going to see a word cloud here in just a second to describe the class's opinion on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a poll, and go ahead and complete this poll when you've had a chance to enter your favorite herp. And once everybody has submitted to the poll, we'll go ahead and move on and share the results. All right, looks like we got a handful of people still working on it here. It doesn't matter which answer you pick for the poll, by the way. I can't have a poll with one question that's like, yes, I'm ready. So I just added different options. All right, almost there. I've got one more person.
Sorry. Could you put the poll up again? I think I lost it.
Sure. Actually, if you might be the only person who hasn't completed it yet, and if you're ready to go, then I'll just go ahead and stop it there. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Let's end that poll there. And then Princeton, do you want to share your screen and show us our sweet herpetological word cloud?
All right, who is ready? Let's see. Let me get into present mode.
Oh man.
There you go.
Axolotl, interesting. So take a quick look here. We've got a couple blue tongue skinks. They should be bigger, but I think because one is tongued and one is tongue, they came up differently. Red-eyed tree frog. Huh. Axolotl is pretty popular. All right.
And skinks and crocodiles.
Huh. I'm just taking a look here. Let's save a screenshot of it. We'll do another one of these at the end of the semester, and then we can kind of compare. Can you save a screenshot of it, Princeton?
Yeah.
Or we'll have the video too, I suppose. Very cool. So this is just a chance to just see where your interests are. What I'm mostly curious about looking at this is most of the species that we're seeing on this list are not from Ohio or even North America. There's only a couple species on here, or groups anyway, that are from there. Although I see geckos a bunch of times, it's spelled differently, so it didn't group up. And there are in fact some geckos in Ohio, an invasive species of gecko. But most of your interests are in other places of the world, which is interesting. All right, cool. We also wanted to try out this technology, this Mentimeter we're going to come back to later in the semester. And so we wanted to make sure that works for everybody, and it looks like it did. All right, well, let's keep moving here. What I'd like to do now is offer just a brief overview of the course structure. Now, most of the details about the course structure are in your syllabus, which I am not going to take our time and read through today. Instead, you are going to read it on your own. Let me just adjust my screen here. Okay. And so the course, there's no textbook for the course. All our readings will be posted as PDFs in Blackboard, so you don't have to worry about that cost. The syllabus, as I mentioned, has a ton of important information. We will spend some time reviewing it in class on Monday. In fact, we're going to play a quiz show kind of game about the syllabus. So you'll read it and then you'll know all the stuff and you'll do great on the quiz show and everyone will think you're amazing. Important thing to note for this class, those of you who have had me for an instructor in other classes are familiar with my structure using class programs. This is the list for every single class. So for us, just twice a week, you're going to have a list of assignments, readings, surveys, videos, et cetera, et cetera. And this helps keep everything very organized and explicit. And so I want to make sure you're aware of that. You do have a class program for next class on Monday, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. So with that in mind, go ahead and find the course in Blackboard. I'd like you to take a minute and log into Blackboard, find this course, and then find the syllabus and go ahead and open up the syllabus. I am going to launch a poll and let me know when you are ready to go and you have found that syllabus. There we go. The poll is open. So please log into Blackboard right now. Just want to make sure that everyone is on the level. Also note that the syllabus was available a few days ago, but I actually updated it last night. So if you were ambitious and updated and downloaded the syllable a couple of days ago, go ahead and download it again. There's just a few minor changes, but it probably makes sense for you to have the most recent version. All right, I've got one more person, and Dr. Mason and Princeton, when you're ready to go, just complete the poll too, because I can't tell who has submitted. I'm just waiting till everyone has indicated they're ready here. As you're waiting, you can just go ahead and flip through the syllabus, get a feel for what's in there. Still have one person working on getting that. If you'd like to send me a message in the chat if you need any help, I'm happy to help out. Okay, I think we're all ready. I'm gonna end the poll. Let's go back here. So your syllabus looks like this. It has your instructors here at the top, and then it's several pages of important information about the class. One of your assignments for Monday is to read through the syllabus. Please take the 10 or 15 minutes to read through it carefully. It has a lot of important information for you about our class structure, expectations for attendance and field trips, and how you'll earn points and how your grade is calculated, accommodations for classwork, basically all the ways I can do our best to make sure you're successful in this class, all of those things. So please do take a look and read that over carefully before class on Monday. Now, with that in mind, I want you to go back to your Blackboard site here and go ahead and open up your class program for Monday, the 17th of January. I'm going to again launch the poll, and I would like you to just tell me when you're ready to go and you've got the program for Monday up in front of you. I'm just going to walk through this one to make sure we're all able to follow along and have the information you need for Monday. You'll notice here as you're doing this, there's also a spot for the Zoom link for your live stream classes. Later this afternoon, I'll get up a video from today's class, and this link will go to the class page on YouTube where all of the lectures will be posted. So note where that is here under the course content section in Blackboard. Go ahead and open your program for Monday. Take a look at that while you're waiting. I've got a couple people still pulling it up. Still have 2 people working on it. All right, I think we're good to go here. And that poll, let me just make sure. Okay, I think we're good to go. All right, so let's take a look at your class program. Oops, I meant to put that up earlier. This is what your class program for Monday looks like. Notice at the top of the program, it just says the date. And I want to highlight that the date is the date when all of this work is due. So this is your class program for Monday. So it's given today, but all of this work should be done in advance of your class on Monday. Note then I have a list of assignments. So specifically for Monday, you're going to read your course syllabus. You're going to complete this introduction survey to give me some information and your other instructors so we can better teach this course. Then you have a reading to do. I have an excerpt from, it's a chapter in a book. And then finally, and then another article, a news article from a couple years ago. And then I also throw in some extra things here too. So this news article, for example, interviews a researcher named Erin McGee. And I put a link to her Twitter account here so you can see more about her and the cool Find That Lizard game, I guess, that she posts every week on Twitter. Notice each assignment is very explicit and also includes the approximate amount of time it will take to do that assignment. I try to be very explicit about this so you can manage your time and you know what to go in and what to expect. Note that for some of the readings, it's kind of challenging for me to know exactly how much time it will take. So I have a range here, and that will of course vary depending on how quickly you read. Also notice here that there's some of these activities are worth class points. Like for example, this introduction survey, completing that is worth 2 class points. Try to provide the link and the QR code for that as well. So to make it easier, if you're looking at this and you want to just do a survey on your phone or whatever, just makes it that much easier. Everything is mapped out. Notice that the course programs for Monday will be kind of long because we have 5 days between class on Wednesdays and Mondays. Your class program for Mondays to Wednesday will be a bit shorter. Also notice here that at the bottom is your course learning outcomes. So your syllabus has the big learning outcomes, the broad learning outcomes for the entire course. For each class, I break that down and list exactly the things you should understand or know how to do for each class. And this is important because this essentially provides you a study guide. When you get to your quizzes and your exams or assignments in class, if you were to cut out or you make a list of all of these specific learning outcomes, that's essentially your study guide. So for example, when you're studying for the first test, you want to make sure that you understand why the term herpetology is problematic from an evolutionary perspective. So you want to make sure that you can do that specific thing. And all of those are laid out explicitly there on your course class program for each day. So that's the one for Monday. And then you'll have a new one Monday for Wednesday. That's all I want to say about that. I've just got a few announcements and we'll wrap things up. Before I do, what questions do you have for me? Okay, I see a few quizzical looks there. Are you sure you don't have any questions? Okay, great. Well, let's move on then. I want to get on your calendars. Our first class outing is planned for the evening of Tuesday, the 25th of January, and then during class on Wednesday, the 26th of January. We are going to plan on this. However, it's going to be COVID dependent. I'm getting advice from the higher ups at the university. So put this on your calendars, but know that we might have to reschedule if it's not safe for us to travel in vans. We're going down to a site nearby where there is an ongoing study of mud puppies, which are these really big, beautiful salamanders. They're active year round in these very cold waters here in Ohio. We're going to have 2 trips planned, an evening trip planned because they're nocturnal, so we can see them in their natural environment. And then we're also going to go out there the following day during class. My expectation is that you attend one or the other. I understand that some of you will have scheduling conflicts with the Tuesday evening outing, so I'm not going to penalize you for that. However, if you are able to do that outing, it will probably be more interesting and exciting to go out there when these guys are actually active. Of course, you're welcome to go to both. What we're going to do is save some salamanders we catch from the night before, and Ryan Wagner, who's a graduate student at Ohio State, will be talking to us about his ongoing research with these mud puppies. I'll provide more details about timing and what to wear and all that kind of stuff as we get closer. Just wanted to get everyone excited about our first outing planned. And we will have many, many outings throughout the semester, whether that's walking outside the classroom to go catch some snakes in the creek, visiting our salamander field sites, or potentially even visiting some lizard sites down in Columbus. With that is all I have for today. Your ticket out today is to join our GroupMe. So Princeton has graciously set up a GroupMe for this class. I know many of you use this, some of you might not. What this will provide is an easy way for us to communicate, especially around field trips. You'll notice that the syllabus has my phone number, so you can communicate with me, like if we're about to leave for a field trip and you're 2 minutes late and want us to wait or something like that. It's a good way for us to communicate quickly. So please use the QR code. You can then join that GroupMe chat group, and we won't overwhelm you with messages, but we will use it to communicate like important class information as when we're doing things like outings. I see a hand up. Let's see, Ethan, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the only one, but it is not allowing me to join the group me from the QR code.
What? What does it tell you?
It says error occurred. Let me double check. Oh, now it works. Never mind. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Oh, I see a bunch of you are on here already. That's great. If you're not on GroupMe, let me know and we'll make sure that we find alternate ways to communicate with you. It's basically just a chat app. You guys all know more about this stuff than I do, so I'm sure you all know. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, thank you for bearing with our first online class as well. I know it's not ideal. Hopefully Monday we'll all be in person. We are in Science Center room 301. It's a big lab room so that we can do lab type activities right in class without having to go to a different room. Super excited for that. Please email me with any questions, comments, concerns in the meantime. Otherwise, I'll look forward to learning about you all in your survey, and I look forward to seeing everyone on Monday. I'm going to stop recording now, but I will stay online. If anyone has any kind of one-on-one questions, I'm happy to chat. Thanks, everybody.